We are counting down the 8 Australian beer brands you should think twice about before cracking open, plus revealing 4 that actually deliver real flavour and quality. From mass-produced bottles loaded with artificial smoothness and bland, watery recipes, to brews with harsh, metallic aftertastes and questionable consistency, some of the nation's biggest names do not quite live up to the legend. But which beers are genuinely worth pouring, and which should you avoid at all costs? Let us kick off with number 8. Number 8, XXXX Gold. Brewed in Queensland and owned by Lion, XXXX Gold sits at the top of Australia's mid-strength beer charts. With an alcohol by volume of 3.5%, this lager is engineered for session drinking, meaning you can knock back several on a hot afternoon without feeling the effects. That design comes at a price. The flavour is very diluted and overly light, with a thin mouthfeel that leaves little to remember. Hop aroma is minimal and the malt presence barely registers. Across beer forums and tasting panels, drinkers often describe it as boring, watery, or just bland. Even among mass-market lagers, consistency is not a strong suit. Some batches taste slightly more rounded, while others verge on flat and characterless. The marketing leans hard on easy drinking, not on depth or complexity. For those who want a beer that simply disappears in the background, XXXX Gold fits the bill. But if you are after real flavour, this is one to skip. Victoria Bitter, known as VB, stands as one of Australia's most iconic lagers, yet it is also one of the most divisive. Drinkers have long debated its aggressive flavour, and for good reason. Unlike the watery lightness of XXX Gold, VB delivers a punch of harsh metallic notes and a synthetic bitterness that lingers well after the last sip. This is not just a matter of personal taste. The recipe itself has seen several tweaks over the years. Between 2007 and 2012, the brewery quietly adjusted the alcohol content and the formula, drawing a wave of complaints from loyal fans who noticed the change. Many described the new taste as unbalanced, with bitterness that felt forced rather than refreshing. The backlash grew loud enough that the original 4.9% alcohol by volume was eventually restored, but the damage to its reputation lingered. Even today, VB's strong aftertaste and lack of subtlety set it apart from smoother lagers, making it a beer you either swear by or avoid entirely. For those seeking balance and a clean finish, VB's uncompromising edge is often a deal-breaker. Tooheys New is a mainstay in New South Wales pubs, but its reputation rests on a promise that does not quite deliver. Advertised as the ultimate smooth lager, what is really in the glass is a beer engineered for neutrality. The recipe keeps hop aroma to a minimum and relies on a basic grain bill, stripping away any bold or memorable notes. This is not accidental. Brewing choices like heavy filtration and high attenuation flatten out character, leaving a taste profile that is more about absence than presence. In blind tastings, Tooheys New often lands in the middle of the pack, with drinkers describing it as a generic macro, the sort of beer you could swap with almost any other big brand lager and barely notice the difference. Its strongest identity comes from rugby league sponsorship and decades of pub tradition, not from what is in the bottle. For those chasing flavour, Tooheys New's smoothness reads less like a virtue and more like a warning. Expect a beer designed to disappear, not to stand out. Carlton Draft dominates taps across Australia, instantly recognisable for its bright gold pour and frothy head. The brewery's famous big ad campaigns lean into the idea of mateship and classic pub culture, but they rarely mention what is actually in the glass. At 4.6% alcohol by volume, Carlton Draft is pitched as the ultimate session lager. Easy to find, easy to drink, and always fresh from the keg. But that focus on volume comes with a trade-off. The beer's body is consistently thin, with a pale malt backbone that delivers little more than a faint grain note. Hop aroma is almost absent, and the finish often fades out flat, leaving no real aftertaste to savour. Reviewers and competition judges alike describe it as inoffensive or average, a beer designed to please crowds rather than impress anyone looking for depth. For drinkers used to richer craft ales, Carlton Draft's mass-market formula can feel like a missed opportunity. Fresh, yes, but lacking any real character. Its national tap dominance is less about flavour and more about being the default choice in pubs, where consistency and easy drinking matter more than complexity. Emu Export, known affectionately as Bush Chook in Western Australia, is more than just a beer. It is a badge of local pride. It is splashed across stubby holders and meme pages. But behind the red can and the working class legend, the reality in the glass is hard to ignore. With alcohol by volume of about 4.5%, Emu Export is positioned as a full-strength lager, yet its taste tells a different story. Drinkers often describe the palate as grainy sweet, with a pronounced sugary note that feels more manufactured than natural. The hop presence is barely there, and the finish leaves a lingering sweetness that can quickly become cloying, especially over a session. For many in Western Australia, Emu Export is a nostalgic staple, a cheap option at barbecues and footy matches. Yet in blind tastings, the beer's weak body and artificial tasting sweetness stand out, especially when compared to more balanced lagers. The cultural affection for Emu Export is real, but it often masks a sensory profile that is thin on complexity and heavy on processed sugar notes. That is why it lands at number 4. Sentimental value cannot quite make up for a taste that feels engineered for price rather than pleasure. Hahn Super Dry was created for drinkers chasing a low-carb option without the heaviness of traditional lagers. At 4.6% alcohol by volume, it lands in the typical strength range, but almost everything else about the beer has been engineered for maximum dryness. The secret lies in the way it is brewed. High attenuation yeast strains and extended fermentation strip away nearly all the residual sugars, leaving behind a beer that is lean, crisp, and by design extremely dry. This process is often driven by the use of brewing adjuncts like rice or sugar, and, in many low-carb lagers, special enzymes such as amyloglucosidase. While Lion, the parent company, does not disclose its exact recipe, industry experts point out that this approach is standard for achieving the kind of carbohydrate numbers Hahn Super Dry advertises, about 4.2 grams per 375 milliliter serving, less than half of many regular lagers. What's lost in the pursuit of dryness is flavour. Reviews from both enthusiasts and competition judges consistently call out a lack of aroma, a body so light it borders on watery, and a finish that leaves the palate almost empty. Any malt or hop character is fleeting, replaced by a clean, almost neutral profile. For some, this makes Hahn Super Dry a perfect diet-friendly session beer. For others, it is a masterclass in how brewing technology can strip a lager of all depth and complexity. It stands as the archetype of macro engineering, a beer designed for numbers, not for nuance. That is why it ranks so high on this list, not because it is faulty, but because its relentless pursuit of dryness leaves nothing for flavour seekers to hold on to. Great Northern Super Crisp is everywhere, from fishing boats to backyard barbecues, its pale cans promising refreshment under the Queensland sun. The branding leans hard into the outdoors, with marlin, camping chairs and endless blue skies. But what is actually in the glass? For many drinkers, the answer is almost nothing at all. The Super Crisp mid-strength variant clocks in at 3.5% alcohol by volume, and the recipe is dialed for maximum lightness. Enthusiasts and casual drinkers alike often describe it as almost flavourless, a beer that tastes so faint it has been compared in blind tastings to sparkling water with a hint of malt. The body is extremely light, bordering on watery, with barely any hop aroma or bitterness to anchor the profile. The bitterness units are minimal, and the finish is so clean it is easy to forget you have even had a sip. Despite this, Great Northern Super Crisp dominates sales in its category, sold as a premium option for those who want a cold drink after a day outdoors. The advertising sells an image of crisp refreshment, but for those seeking actual flavour, there is little to be found. The word crisp here seems to mean the absence of taste, rather than any real sharpness or bite. It is engineered for drinkability above all else, which for many means a beer that vanishes from memory as soon as it hits the tongue. Among all the major lagers, Great Northern Super Crisp stands out for just how little it offers in the glass, making it the ultimate low point for flavour presence. That vanishing act sets up a dramatic contrast with the next entry, where the pendulum swings from barely there to aggressively bitter. Melbourne Bitter holds a special place in the lineup of old-school Australian lagers, but not for reasons that flatter its reputation. At 4.6% alcohol by volume, and with instantly recognisable retro branding, it promises a classic, hard-edged experience. What sets it apart from the rest is not subtlety or balance, it is the sheer force of its bitterness. Drinkers regularly describe the first sip as a sharp punch, with a finish that lingers long after the glass is empty. The bitterness is not layered or complex, it is assertive, sometimes bordering on abrasive, overwhelming the lighter malt backbone beneath. One of the most common complaints about Melbourne Bitter is how unpredictable each bottle or can is. Some drinkers report a clean, bitter profile that matches the brand's reputation. Others find themselves wrinkling their noses at odd, stale, or even skunky aromas. This is not always a matter of brewing error. Mainstream lagers like Melbourne Bitter travel long distances through Australia's sprawling distribution network, and exposure to light or oxygen along the way can easily alter what ends up in the glass. Light strike, also known as skunking, is a well-known risk for beers stored under bright retail lighting, and oxidation from imperfect seals or warm storage can flatten or sour the aroma. For a beer already defined by aggressive bitterness, even small changes in freshness can tip the experience from old-fashioned to downright unpleasant. While some fans embrace Melbourne Bitter as a badge of working-class authenticity, many reviewers and casual drinkers agree the combination of harsh bitterness and unpredictable aroma makes it the least reliable choice among Australia's mainstream lagers. When a beer's best-case scenario is divisive and its worst is undrinkable, it earns its place at the very top of the avoid list. Number 4, James Squire 150 Lashes, stands out as an inviting entry point for anyone looking to move beyond standard lagers. Brewed by Malt Shovel, Lyon's craft-focused arm, this Australian-style pale ale pours with a gentle haze and a pale straw colour, hinting at a more interesting experience right from the glass. At around 4.2% alcohol by volume, it is approachable, but offers noticeably more character than the macro lagers that fill most pub taps. The aroma leans into soft citrus and subtle tropical hops, with just enough fruit and floral notes to catch your attention without overpowering the palate. Flavour-wise, it strikes a rare balance. Crisp, lightly sweet malt underpins a gentle bitterness, all rounded out by a clean finish. Unlike many mainstream options, 150 Lashes is praised for its consistency from batch to batch, making it a reliable pick for those tired of rolling the dice with every six-pack. Widely available across Australia, it is the kind of beer that gently nudges mainstream drinkers toward the world of craft, offering a safe and satisfying upgrade without demanding an acquired taste. Number 3, Little Creatures Pale Ale. Little Creatures Pale Ale arrived in Fremantle in 2000 and changed what Australian drinkers expected from a pale ale. While most pub taps were pouring light, forgettable lagers, Little Creatures introduced a full-flavoured beer inspired by the United States craft scene. The aroma leaps out of the glass, thanks to a generous dose of Cascade hops, the same variety that helped launch the United States craft revolution. Each pour brings a bright, citrusy bouquet layered over a deeper, toasty malt backbone. At 5.2% alcohol by volume, this is a beer with real presence, offering more body and complexity than almost anything in its price range. Awards and critical acclaim followed quickly. Blind tastings consistently rate Little Creatures Pale Ale as one of Australia's most respected, with judges praising its hop intensity and balance. The beer's richer flavour and fuller mouthfeel set a new standard for what a mainstream Australian pale ale could deliver. Even as larger brewers tried to catch up, Little Creatures held its ground by keeping flavour front and centre. It stands as a landmark in local brewing, an iconic, widely available pale ale that proved Australian drinkers were ready for more than just easy drinking lagers. Stone and Wood Pacific Ale has become a modern classic among Australian craft beers. Born in Byron Bay in 2008, this ale helped define the Pacific Ale style, putting fresh, local ingredients at the forefront. At 4.4% alcohol by volume, it pours a hazy golden yellow with a soft, cloudy appearance that signals its unfiltered nature. The first thing that hits the senses is its signature aroma, a burst of passion fruit and tropical fruit thanks to generous use of Australian Galaxy hops. These hops, grown in Tasmania, are known for their vibrant, juicy notes, and Pacific Ale uses them to full effect. Every sip delivers a smooth, rounded mouthfeel with gentle carbonation, making it both refreshing and satisfying. The flavour is bright and clean, with a subtle wheat character supporting the fruit-forward nose. Unlike many mass-produced lagers, Pacific Ale relies on careful brewing choices, no shortcuts, no artificial flavour boosters, just a focus on real ingredients and balance. The beer's reputation is well earned, with frequent appearances in the Gab's Hottest 100 and a top 10 finish in national rankings. It captures the relaxed coastal spirit of its home, offering a safe bet for anyone seeking genuine flavour and a taste of modern Australian craft. While it is not as complex as bottle-conditioned ales, its standout freshness and ingredient integrity make it one of the best choices on the market. Cooper's Pale Ale stands alone in the Australian beer world for one reason: it is alive in the bottle. Every stubby carries a layer of yeast settled at the bottom, a sign of secondary fermentation happening right inside the glass. This is not a marketing flourish. It is a brewing method the Cooper family has defended for generations, refusing to filter or pasteurize their flagship ale, even as rivals streamlined for clarity and shelf life. The result is a pale ale with a gentle haze, a creamy head, and a flavour that evolves from the first pour to the last sip. At 4.5% alcohol by volume, Cooper's Pale Ale strikes a middle ground, sessionable but never thin, with natural carbonation that comes from the yeast, not a carbon dioxide tank. Drinkers are encouraged to roll the bottle gently before opening, rousing the yeast and unlocking subtle citrus, bready malt, and a faint spice that only live fermentation can deliver. Blind tastings and competition panels consistently score Cooper's above the big brand lagers for complexity and consistency, with judges praising its balance and the way each batch stays true to the last. Family ownership means the recipe and process have not bent to mass market pressure, and ingredient lists are transparent. For anyone tired of artificial smoothness, Cooper's Pale Ale is proof that tradition and careful brewing can still deliver a beer that is clean, consistent, and full of real character. It is the safest bet for drinkers who want more than just a cold, anonymous lager. Across all 12 beers, one truth stands out. Australia's mainstream giants chase mass appeal with bland, engineered formulas, while a smaller craft tier fights for genuine flavour and real ingredients. This split is not just about taste, it is about what we accept in our glass. Beer culture here is at a crossroads, and every pour is a choice. Which side are you on? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more deep dives.